everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Brack and Roll Future Proofing Your Warehouse. I'm your host, Ashley Felpash. Today, we'll be discussing navigating labor challenges in modern supply chain. Joining me today is Andy Hunter, Senior Director of Supply Chain at Connors Group. Andy, we're excited to have you on again. Go ahead and tell the audience a little bit about you and your experiences, and then we'll get started.
Sounds great. Yeah, thanks, Ashley, for having me back on. As Ashley stated, I'm a Senior Director at Connors Group. I head up our supply chain strategy, new offer and development, and our partnerships. And what we're talking about today is kind of near and dear to my heart a little bit because prior to joining Connors Group, I was in operations for a large 3PL, and during the pandemic was a very difficult time. So hoping to bring some perspectives today on what's going on in the labor market, things to consider, macro level, and then from an industry perspective, how can you maybe navigate that with different tools, technologies, approaches for your specific business?
Absolutely. And even though the pandemic is somewhat over, everyone is still feeling, I think, the effects of that as well. So just to start off with a very general question for the audience, and that is, what are labor standards?
Sure. Forgot to mention that at Connors, we are kind of like the labor experts. We're a team of 125 plus industrial engineers. So we do a fair amount in the labor management space. So labor is kind of our business. So attached to that, labor standards is essentially a set performance target that is reasonable and attainable, that is given to an individual in the facility at the process level. It could be units per hour. It could be more complicated, like an engineer labor standard. That might be time per case line, give travel credit, the whole 9 yards. And it's usually based on a defined best method. And ultimately, the goal of it is to set fair and accurate expectation for the teammates. And then leadership can use that to properly manage their business effectively on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for that explanation. So during the pandemic, supply chains were stressed out and labor could not keep up with demand. What trends have you seen recently with the current labor market?
Sure. As I mentioned in operations, it was extremely challenging during COVID and the pandemic. Hiring, recruiting, retainment, traditional temp to perm strategies were really flipped on their heads, and companies were looking to find new ways to attract and retain talent. Huge focus. Fast forward a few years, and labor continues to be a disruptor. Volume is not quite at the pandemic levels, but ultimately we're still in a long-term labor crisis situation. What I mean by that is overall birth rates are declining, wages are climbing, so it's really like a double-edged sword. And ultimately, that's because a lot of the baby boomers are leaving the workforce for retirement, new workers are being introduced, and unfortunately, most warehouses aren't an attractive place to work. No one really wakes up one day and says they want to work in a warehouse. So it's really challenging businesses to think differently as it relates to their labor strategies, whether that's compensation, engagement strategies, work schedules, just to name a few. And companies are really forced to use labor surveys to determine where to put warehouses now. So before you would just look at, hey, transportation, where should warehouses go? But now I need to put a warehouse in a place that has the appropriate labor that I need as well. And the way we look at it is now it's not really, labor is almost like it needs to be seen as an asset, probably one of your more vital assets, and use that as a differentiator in the market, because replacing an employee can be very, very costly. So see your employees as an asset, which may have not been the same position most companies looked at, 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Yeah, it's interesting. And it seems like companies are offering more flexible work options and focusing on keeping their employees happy. With shortages, it sounds like there's a lot more training and learning going on. So I know that companies are, definitely focusing on that. So how are your clients approaching recruitment and retention strategies in the current labor market?
Well, one thing holds true, and pay continues to be the most important factor in the logistics space. It's constantly surveyed, and it's the most important thing when someone's looking for a job or staying at the current job. Closely by that is job security and shift and work schedule. And really what that means when you combine those two, that historically off shift pay differentials might have been 50 cents, 75 cents an hour. That's no longer viable. So those hard to staff shifts are paying much more premium, maybe $2 or more an hour. And you're also seeing a strong desire in different shift schedules. Some were looking for part-time shifts, a lot of preference now for those 4 10-hour work shifts, which is more versus the traditional 5/8 that maybe seen thing in the past. And you're also seeing people look for ways to learn new skills. If they're going to work in a warehouse, they want to look for growth, development, and usually that aligns with the first point, right? It aligns with an increased pay. And when you look at why people stay at a company, it's all around engagement. So loyalty equals engagement. So having programs to give them flexible PTO, a lot of people actually prefer that over overtime and incentives sometimes. So flexible PTO, advancement opportunities, being treated fairly, respectfully. And that really kind of changes the way people maybe looked at labor management programs in the past. Because really, before, maybe people saw them as a punitive tool, like how to get people to work faster, harder. But now it's kind of not that case anymore. It's more of the carrot, it's more of an engagement apparatus. And that's really how people are looking at things a little differently.
Yeah, those smart moves will keep people competitive in the market today.
Yep.
So, how has the labor market affected the operational efficiency and productivity of your client supply chain operations?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if this is just my personal experience or more of a macro level, but I always look at things like in most warehouses, you have like two sides of the coin. You have those tenured workforce that's that are there and they're reliable, and then there's usually a percentage of the workforce that isn't that constant churn. And because of that, you're always bringing new hire classes or temps to kind of stay ahead, so that onboarding, training, ramp up is a fair amount of your time now, which has an impact on overall efficiency and productivity. Anyone less than that 90-day camp is kind of a focus to get them up to speed as quickly as possible, because they are unfortunately not hitting full productivity day one. So with turnover rates high, like the need for foundational programs around like training, best way of doing things, so you can get them up to full productivity as quickly as possible is paramount. Labor management programs can help a bit there. So it highlights where workers maybe need that additional coaching or retraining. Also helps supervisors spend their time with the people that need it the most. And then you also need to be more flexible, as so now people are being cross-trained. So you need to make sure as volumes or profiles dictate, you need to have a workforce that can be a little more nimble and kind of go from one process to another. So again, combine them all, higher overtime, higher turnover, increased coaching, increased training, really has make year over year hitting those year over year productivity goals that most companies have very challenging.
And those are great points. While there are challenges with finding enough workers, it's pushing companies to find smarter way to do things, which is important. So, what technological solutions are your clients implementing to overcome labor challenges now?
Sure. I would bucket these solutions into two categories. You have your hardware solutions, and then you have your software solutions. And it's really to help with the labor, reduce costs. And so the hardware side, tons of technology automation out there. There's goods to person solutions. There's AMRs, autonomous mobile robots, AGVs, tons and tons of new robotic solutions, and they've all streamlined and simplified processes. And then you have tons of different software solutions out there. Warehouse management systems, they're going to the cloud, they're becoming more streamlined. They're now becoming more of execution systems, which is focusing more on task management, how to be most efficient. And then you layer in some of the new things they're looking at with AI and machine learning capabilities, and that really makes those systems much more efficient as far as how do you operate within the four walls of a building. And then you attach that to a labor management system where you have labor standards, you're monitoring your employees, you're driving engagement through that. And then you combine all of those together. They don't necessarily eliminate like labor, but it's really supplementing and eliminating that high overtime, maybe that workforce churn that I mentioned before of the constant rehiring and ramp up period. And that ultimately is where companies are trying to get to, like supplement technology and solutions to almost hold serve with labor to then hopefully allow the organization to grow from a revenue and volume perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. it's cool to hear about the automation and software and hardware piece and the AI, how it all comes together to be used to help out. So, with a variety of technology solutions available, how do you advise clients on developing an effective technology roadmap as they go through that process?
Sure. I mean, technology, like the wave is coming. It's not like if, but like when and where. So I just like to stress, like, don't fall in love with a piece of technology. Like, solve for the problem, solve for your business needs. Don't like fall in love with a solution in search of a problem. Like, do the opposite. So, and the way to properly do that is ensure you have a solid foundation of your current business. That way, when you look at those technology solutions, you have a firm, solid ROI that ultimately will confirm whether that technology makes sense. If you try to put automation or technology on a bad process that has opportunities within it, it's going to essentially make your ROI better than it is. So, and if you're not sure where to start, like, you got to use data to point you in the right direction. Like, start with an assessment, identify your opportunities, your pain points, research technology options out there, go to trade shows, ultimately align to your business objectives, like where you're going from a future perspective. You want to make sure that you're not designing for today, you're designing for where you're going to be. So that's kind of like how I would look at a roadmap. So understand where you are today, make sure you have a sound foundation, use that for any return on investment analyses that you're doing, and then go where the the ball is going, or under where the ball is going, not where it is.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like taking it step by step and making sure investments match up with the business needs makes a lot of sense. And it's about getting results that matter and creating your warehouse for the future. So, what labor market trends do you foresee posing challenges for clients in the next 3 to 5 years?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a shift in the demographics from a labor perspective. So if you look at the current labor pool, I'm not sure I can quote percentages, but I believe millennials and Gen Zers make up the largest percentage of today's workforce. And they grew up with technology. So they show a strong interest in being tech savvy. So, which positions the industry well if you think about from a skill set and interest perspective. So, as the industry evolves and starts looking at implementation of different technologies, automation, you have a workforce that's interested in being prepared to operate with and around it. So, I think the interest, skill set, demographics align closely with where you're going from a technology roadmap. So that's one point. The second one I would say is there's a lot of like labor laws, compliance related focus. So there's a bunch of newer laws out there around quote unquote quotas in the warehouse spurning from like there's a bill that came out at the tail end of the pandemic in California. I think most people know it's AB 701. And it's put a lot more scrutiny on the ability for operations to set performance targets, to drive efficiency. And there's actually been some somewhat of recent transaction at the federal level as well. So it might be something that everyone needs to be prepared for, not just people that operate out west in California. And really, all the law states is you need to have documentation definition for your productivity quotas, and labor standards and labor management systems will be key for that.
Absolutely. It sounds like staying ready to adapt is key to staying future proof. So, as we wrap up today's episode, is there anything else you would like to share with the audience today?
Yeah, last thing would just be it's probably the buzzwords, but like AI and machine learning, I think are a big part of this as well. So like, how do companies get smarter around how they incorporate advanced analytics? I mean, those are the buzzwords, but it's really about being smarter with data and understanding your business to be more streamlined in how you deploy labor. I mean, I've lost still early on, but I think you can make decisions faster, more reliable, and that'll ultimately make you a more productive workforce.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Andy, and thank you to
Thank
everybody
you.
for joining us on this episode of Rack and Roll. We hope you found our discussion on navigating labor challenges useful. If you have any questions or would like more information, please don't hesitate to reach out. Our contact details are provided in the description below. Until next time, take care.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.